Oh yeah, this is gonna be good. I've never beaten a Mario and Luigi game. I know, I'm terrible. It's the Mario spin-off series I definitely have the least experience with, and frankly might be one of my biggest blind spots when it comes to Nintendo. Now look, for full transparency, I have played some games in the series. Back in 2010, my grandma took me to Walmart and bought me this beautiful white DSi, and with it was bundled a copy of Bowser's Inside Story, which I actually did play quite a bit back then. But I never finished it, and I don't remember really anything about it other than that you go inside of Bowser. When Dream Team came out a few years later, I bought it and once again played maybe, I don't know, 8 hours or so, but my memories are hazy at best. With Nintendo revitalizing the classic feel of Mario RPG spin-offs lately through fantastic remakes of Mario RPG and Thousand Year Door, and of course the return of the Mario and Luigi series with Brothership, I thought now would be the perfect time to finally dive deep into this adored Mario sub-series and see what all of the hype is about by playing Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga for the very first time. But before we get into my thoughts, let's take some time to set the scene and really go over the game's development history for a moment. Back in 1996, Nintendo collaborated with Squaresoft to develop and release Super Mario RPG on the SNES. It's a fairly simple but very endearing RPG set in the Mario universe, featuring some original character designs by Square. It was actually the first time Mario & Co. had ever appeared in a turn-based game, and while it wouldn't garner a remake or a sequel for a very long time, the game was actually very successful, selling over 2 million copies. Nintendo knew that they needed to keep this style of Mario spin-off alive, but Squaresoft was too busy making Final Fantasy VII at the time to make a proper sequel. So Nintendo looked to the creators of Fire Emblem over at Intelligent Systems to create a spiritual successor for the Nintendo 64 called Paper Mario. Paper Mario was received exceptionally well by critics and fans alike, and for me personally, it still stands as my favorite game in the series. It seemed like Nintendo had their surefire Mario RPG hit figured out for the foreseeable future with Paper Mario, but here's the thing: Game Boy Advance. See, back in the early aughts, and really up until the 3DS came out in 2011, Nintendo rarely had crossover in what games they'd release on both home and handheld systems. Or at the very least, if a series was on both consoles, usually the console version, the home console version, would be this big budget 3D game, while the handheld version would be a smaller budget 2D top-down game or 2D platformer. Nothing wrong with that, but that's just kind of how it was back then. Paper Mario, for a very long time, never saw an entry on a portable device, so they needed a new type of Mario RPG for the Game Boy Advance, and that's where Alpha Dream comes in. Founded in 2000 by ex-Square employee Tetsuya Mizuno, along with even more staff that had worked on Super Mario RPG, Alpha Dream's first project was never localized. Koto Battle Tengai no Moribito was released for the Game Boy Color in 2001, and had a card-based battle system with some promo art totally not inspired by Pokemon. Totally. They also worked on several Hamtaro games that, as far as I'm aware, are actually pretty well regarded, and have received a bit of a cult following. Side note, I loved Hamtaro as a kid. I'll play these eventually. Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga was made to fill a gap. Well, 2 gaps actually. For starters, Nintendo needed a Mario RPG series for the Game Boy Advance, but more importantly, they needed an original Mario game, period. The GBA launched in 2001 with Super Mario Advance, and while we did get Mario Kart Superstar Kit in 2002, it wasn't until holiday 2003, when Superstar Saga released, that the GBA got its own truly unique Mario game that's not Mario Kart. That's kinda crazy. I actually went ahead and bought a physical copy of the game while working on this video. I played it through Switch Online, but I wanted my own complete copy of the game on the Game Boy Advance. I love the promo art done for the series by Toshizo Morikawa, and man oh man, there is just nothing like flipping through an old school manual like this. Take me back, Nintendo. Enough of that though. What is Mario and Luigi, and what differentiates it from Super Mario RPG and Paper Mario? Well, right off the bat, I have to say that I love the art style and overall vibe of this game. I was looking at some footage of the 3DS remake that came out back in 2017, we'll get there in another video, and while I do like what they did with the graphics in that remake, there's something so whimsical and quite literally bright about Superstar Saga on the GBA. It's pretty simple pixel art, but they're able to do a lot with character expressions and animations despite that. I love this part at the beginning of the game where you play as Toad for a few minutes, walking past Luigi doing laundry and ultimately entering their house and walking in on Mario in the shower. It does a great job of showing that this is going to be a goofy adventure. Also, poor Toad. Little dude has seen things he'll never recover from. But what about the story? This is an RPG after all, a genre typically praised for its storytelling. Both Paper Mario and Super Mario RPG before it might have simple stories, but they're endearing stories full of great characters that I've really come to love over the years. And I'm happy to say that Superstar Saga is no exception. It might not necessarily move the needle or anything, but with enough charm infused with a decent setting and cast of characters, I must say I quite enjoyed it. It introduces a pair of new villains to the Mario universe with Cackletta and Fawful. They disguise themselves as ambassadors of the Bean Kingdom, a totally new location, so that they can pay a visit to Princess Peach and steal her voice, which we later find out is because they need a pure and innocent voice to awaken the mystical Beanstar, an item that can grant any wish the user desires. Pretty standard Mario bad guy stuff, but I like that it isn't just Bowser, and I love the overall bean setting this game has going on. Paper Mario 64 and Thousand Year Door have great original designs for their respective casts, don't get me wrong, but sometimes they can feel a little unfocused, if that makes sense. But for some reason Alpha Dream woke up and decided just beans. We're making an entire game about beans, and they locked in and delivered a great cast of bean dudes. I love it. Beyond our two new villains, we have Lady Lima. We got Queen Bean. We have the thief Bean Popple, who teams up with an amnesia-ridden Bowser and puts a mask on him and calls him Rookie. And of course we have the absolutely goated Prince Peasley, who always arrives just in time to save the day. And that's just scratching the surface, guys. There's more great characters like the Hammerhead Bros, Harhal, the clothing designer who makes you play this minigame with paint-filled bob-ombs to splat ink on a shirt and design them for him, the adorable little beanlet pets you have to collect in the Bean Castle Town, which is weird that the Beanish people would also have small beans as pets, but whatever. And that's just the beans. There's the absolute Chad Starshade Bros who teach you how to high jump and twirl in the overworld. There's Blablanodon the pterodactyl. Man, one of the bosses in this game, get this, it's a hermit crab, right? And his name is Hermie the Third, and he just has like a huge Christmas tree for a shell. Just absolutely stellar designs here. Of the two main villains, Fawful definitely steals the show for me though. I like Cackletta too, don't get me wrong, but Fawful has always been a character I've just seen people using as their profile picture on social media and message boards, and quoting for like the past 2 decades. I Have Fury is an all-time iconic Nintendo quote, and I just love this little dude. I kind of want to punch him in the face, but I love him. Superstar Saga also has some voice work done by Charles Martinet, as well as a few others. I love hearing the bros talk gibberish, but it was a little weird hearing voice clips from Super Mario 64 here. I've played that game like 1,000 times at this point, and I really just had no idea they'd reused voice clips from it. Nothing wrong with doing that, it just completely took me off guard hearing "Let's go" coming out of a GBA game. So yeah, I think Superstar Saga has a really fun cast of original characters, but even the pre-existing Mario characters have a decent showing here. Mario and Luigi obviously get the most time to shine. I love seeing them just be goofballs, man. Like, whenever something bad happens and they're trying to explain the situation to someone else and they try to act it out, or seeing them concoct plans like Luigi wearing Princess Peach's dress to trick Cackletta, it's great stuff. Luigi especially gets a nice bit of focus here, with several sections where he actually leaves Mario for a bit and heads out on his own. At this point in time, Luigi had only starred in one game. He wasn't really as universally iconic as he is today. I mean, even looking at this old Prince ad, the marketing was talking about how Mario and Luigi were like putting aside their differences to work together in this game. I mean, sure, they might have a bit of a rivalry when it comes to some things, I guess, but it's definitely not something Nintendo really highlights ever anymore. So to see Luigi getting such a major focus in this game, I mean, it's titled Mario and Luigi, it'd be kind of weird if he wasn't, but to see him getting such a nice focus, even in his own sections where you play as just him, I thought was really awesome. Princess Peach and Bowser don't play as much of a role as I'd like though, honestly. I know Bowser will get more of a focus a few games from now, but I do wish he had played a slightly bigger role here. After the bros launch him into the Bean Kingdom, he gets amnesia, which is actually pretty fun. I like Bowser getting amnesia, but then as soon as he gets his memory back, Cackletta possesses him, basically. I would have liked a little bit more, but I know Bowser getting controlled is kind of a staple of the franchise, so I'm fine with it. Also, I have to give a huge shout out to Toadsworth for just even being in this game, because him being in a game is literally always a positive thing. But what's going on with him and Lady Lima at the end of the game? I see you, Toadsworth. I see you. Combat in Mario & Luigi is played very similarly to Paper Mario, in that you have to do real-time button presses to avoid incoming attacks, but also to make your own moves hit harder. And while Superstar Saga is pretty dang easy overall, I gotta be real here. I think this might be my favorite gameplay in any Mario RPG I've played so far, or at least I can see it becoming my favorite gameplay style once I get deeper into the series and more mechanics get layered on top. What makes this game feel so different from Paper Mario, though, is that both Mario and Luigi are active at the same time, which means you have to react in real time with both characters to avoid or block enemies, which I just thought added a much needed twist on the formula. I love RPGs, but I'd be lying if I said I'm paying full attention 100% of the time. If I'm playing Pokemon, or Final Fantasy, or even something like Paper Mario, which does have those real-time elements, generally speaking, I will almost always just start spamming the A button in some areas at a certain point if I know I'm high enough level for it to not be an issue. With Superstar Saga though, even in those moments where I'm retreading ground, going to an area I've been to, and this freaking annoying Lakitu keeps throwing spiny boys at me, like, I was pretty much always on my toes, even though the game is easy, because you never know which of the two brothers might get targeted. I just think the setup is a lot more engaging than a lot of other games, so this was a real nice breath of fresh air, despite its easy difficulty. With that being said, it's kind of a double-edged sword. There were sections of this game, Bowser Castle, where I admittedly was getting very, very tired of waiting for an enemy to move to the front of the line and slowly do their animation to attack. It gets especially tiring when you've already seen every possible move they can use and you know exactly how to time your jump or your hammer swing to avoid it. It kind of just gets tedious. So on the one hand, I do like how engaging and involved the combat is in this game, but it can also kind of be an annoyance at times too. Mario and Luigi both have their expected movesets. You can jump on enemies, and once you unlock them, smack them with your hammers. Mario using a hammer is iconic going back to the arcade game, so it's nice to see the RPG games have continued that tradition, but the hammer design in this series in particular have always felt like they're really trying to hone in on that classic feel especially. Like the hammer in Paper Mario and Super Mario RPG, it's cool, but it's different. So I really like the hammer design in this game in particular. You also get a basic third attack later on when each of the brothers touch these magical orbs. Mario gets the Firebrand, and Luigi gets the Thunder Hand. I've seen the official artwork for this game. I've played some of Bowser's Inside Story and Dream Team. I gotta be honest, I had absolutely no idea that the bros get elemental power somehow. Just undeniably cool to give them a touch of magic in a turn-based RPG. Big fan of that. You also have the special bros attacks that use BP, or bros points. This is how you'll be doing most of your damage in this game. Both Mario and Luigi will have 4 each by the end of the game. These attacks have you executing quick time commands while Mario and Luigi do some nonsensical Looney Tunes looking combo. And I love it. Take the Knockback Bros attack, for example. Luigi winds up his hammer and hits Mario with it, which sends him flying at the enemy like a cannonball, but then once you upgrade the move, you can have Mario bounce back and repeat the process for even more damage. Or my personal favorite, and one I totally didn't exclusively use for the latter half of the game, the Chopper Bros attack, where Mario hammers Luigi into the ground, allowing him to burst out from underneath the enemy, doing some serious damage repeatedly. Something I didn't really take advantage of is the ability to make these moves cost less BP, but the trade-off being that they're harder to land. Normally when it's time to press the A or B button, the screen will go dark, slow down some, and tell you to press the button. But if you're a pro gamer, you can opt in to pay less bros points to basically remove these accessibility features. I learned playing this game that I am not particularly good at timing without a cue, but it's a cool feature for those wanting to master this game. Leveling up works about how you'd expect, though I definitely prefer this to something like Thousand Year Door's star point system. It's simple XP, but every time you level up you also get some bonus points you can put into the stat of your choosing. I realized pretty quickly that putting every bonus into stash every time I leveled up wasn't the best choice, because this game actually encourages you to diversify where you're putting your stats by giving you even more bonus points if you don't keep putting it into the same place. Cool system, I like it. Overall, I really enjoy the combat in Superstar Saga. It's not the most in-depth, it's not particularly hard either, but it's just fun. Controlling both Mario and Luigi kept me engaged to the end, even if I might have been spamming the same 2 bros attacks in the final area. I wasn't really sure what to expect when it came to exploration in this game. One thing I do remember from my time with Dream Team back in 2013 is that I actually got lost and didn't know what to do to progress. Now, I don't know if that's because I was a dumb kid, or if the game was actually confusing at times when trying to find the path forward, but either way, I thankfully didn't have that issue with Superstar Saga, because the map is relatively small overall. In general, the game is pretty linear. It pushes you towards the next objective very naturally. There's something of a Metroidvania element to exploration where you unlock new moves and upgrades to use in the overworld, so there'll be multiple times where you'll see a boulder you can't break yet, or this weird boo puzzle thing that you can't push into place until you get the proper move or upgrade. Nothing that in depth, but I always enjoy world exploration like this. It took me a while to get used to just doing stuff in the overworld though. Since you control both Mario and Luigi independent of one another, that also means you have to switch their actions separately. I couldn't tell you how many times I accidentally switched past the hammer and had to cycle through all my abilities again, which mind you, there's only a few, but when it's happening over and over again, it can get kind of annoying having to deal with it all the time. In Bean Bean Castletown, there's a cafe owned by EGAD from Luigi's Mansion for some reason. While you're exploring the overworld, you can find these patches in the ground that are hiding different types of coffee beans, and mixing them at the cafe will unlock a number of different cutscenes with EGAD himself. I gotta be honest, Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube is my favorite game of all time, and while I knew EGAD had some sort of cameo in this game, I did not know that there was this much EGAD content. There's even pixel versions of the ghost from the first Luigi's Mansion in this game. I love it. On top of that, you can get some pretty awesome items as rewards, like the Excite Spring that lets you float after jumping in combat, or the bonus ring that nets you some bonus XP if you win a battle without taking damage. Now, something I had seen about this game before playing it is that there were actually a lot more planned cameo appearances from other Nintendo franchises beyond just EGAD, and while I love the Luigi's Mansion rep here, it's a huge disappointment knowing what could have been here in addition to what we got. Samus, Link, Fox, Olimar, Wario, and the Excite Bike Racer were all planned to appear in these cutscenes, but for whatever reason they were cut before it released. Just tragic. This game does a great job at world building too, and in general there are just so many memorable moments that make each chapter of the game stand out. Early on, you go to Chucklehuck Woods and learn about Chuckola, which becomes relevant again later when you make your way to the SS Chuckola. Or how about when you go to Woohoo University and have to fight the viruses from Dr. Mario? That was a huge fun surprise. Or the Yoshi Theater, which has these ads for other GB8 games including Staffy. We need more Starfy games in the West. Come on, Nintendo. Oh, or how about the entire semi-open world surfing area where you use Luigi as a surfboard? There's just so many interesting moments and memorable locations in this game. It's impressive they were able to cram so much into what is ultimately a pretty small world map and a really short game overall, clocking in at about 12 hours for my first playthrough. After you progress far enough into the story, Princess Peach decides to pay a visit to the Bean Bean Kingdom by flying in through the Bean Bean Airport, which I like just because airports are never really a thing in Mario games. I mean, you see Mario and Peach on a plane at the beginning of Super Mario Sunshine, and there's the Sunshine Airport track in Mario Kart 8, but I don't know, I just thought this was a really cool location. You have this whole little side mission where you have to fill Mario up with water and spit it onto the Piranha plants to get them out of the runway so she can land. Cool stuff. Eventually, Peach learns of Little Fungi Town, a city of toads that migrated to the Bean Bean Kingdom, and she asks Mario and Luigi to escort her through the treacherous Tee-Hee Valley so that she can pay them a visit. Yep, that's right. There's a whole escort section where Peach will walk on autopilot right into enemies, and if you let her wander off screen for even just a few seconds, she'll get captured and be taken away. At first I thought this was going to be really annoying, but it doesn't last very long, and it was actually pretty fun solving the puzzles as fast as possible while she's walking around mindlessly, making sure to keep enemies away from her. But then we actually get to Little Fungi Town, which I love. It's just a standard mushroom-themed village, but there's an arcade where you can play this fun little minigame where you have to raise and lower a platform to send items on either side to get points. Like most minigames in Superstar Saga, it's not the most in-depth, but it actually features a cameo from none other than Geno himself, which is really cool, but weird. I mean, they had to get Square's approval on this. Square is in the copyright for this game just because of this cameo. It's a fun thing to put in, but it's kind of surprising they actually went to the effort to do that. For beating the high score here, your prize is an Inventus Room, which Mario immediately eats, and he immediately gets so sick that the doctor gives him 3 days to live. Or 3 days until he becomes a bean. I'm not sure which is worse. Mario has bean fever, which means it's up to Luigi to save him by going to the treacherous Gafawa ruins and retrieve some crabby grass that'll heal him. But there's one small issue. Luigi is so scared of going alone that he needs a Kamek to hypnotize him into thinking that he is Mario so that he'll be brave enough to go to the ruins. It's just such a ludicrous scenario. I love this section. Now, a little bit more than halfway through the game, the Beanstar breaks into 4 pieces and gets scattered to each corner of the map. I'll be honest and say that my first reaction to this was just, ugh. Normally when games do this, it kind of just feels like padding, just having you go back through areas you've already been, usually in a non-linear structure. And to be fair, this game does have padding, but I don't know, it can be done right, but I find it tiresome when games do this more often than not. Luckily, I misread the situation because while yes, the 4 Beanstar pieces do scatter to each corner of the map, they're all actually in relatively different areas, or at least 2 screens that had previously been inaccessible. And frankly, I think a lot of the interactions during this portion of the game are actually a highlight for me. Going back to Teehee Valley and seeing Popple having teamed up with Birdo who's fallen in love with him was a fun twist. Then there's the Winkle Coliseum in Chucklehook Woods. It's such a short segment of the Beanstar Peace Hunt, but man, they really added this whole society of weird, adorable, ominous snails who speak in weird English that run this Coliseum where you play a minigame that involves flaming boulders. I love it. I'd play an entire game based on the Winkles. And now, let's talk about the final section of the game, Bowser's Castle. I'll start by saying I like the assortment of enemies, and I mean this goes for the entire game, but especially these sniper bullet bills, just an absolutely killer design. And I also enjoyed the puzzles, but for some reason they put in a boss rush consisting of every Koopaling, which like, man, Bowser isn't even in charge right now. What are they doing here? I think having to fight all 7 back-to-back was just kind of tiring. They all essentially do the same thing, spitfire or spin around. Some of the later Koopalings make clones and there's a turn limit you need to beat them by. I'm not one of the people that are tired of the Koopalings being represented everywhere. I love my dude Morton, but I didn't really love their inclusion in this game. But, to be fair to Mario and Luigi, to Superstar Saga's credits, this was the first major inclusion of the Koopalings since I believe Super Mario World? It was a big deal when they showed up in New Soup Wii, but Superstar Saga did it first, so for that I have to applaud it. As for the final fight with Bowletta, I liked it a lot. Absolutely epic boss theme, and the second phase where you fight her heart, or essence, or soul, whatever, was really cool. You start with 1 HP in the second phase, and if you lose, you need to restart from the first phase. This is by far the hardest fight in the game. I talked about it earlier, but the game is really easy, and while I didn't exactly have too much trouble during this boss fight, she definitely kept me on my toes more than any other boss. This Orb Frenzy fried my brain, man. Oh, also, before we end the video, Superstar Saga has a wonderful soundtrack composed by none other than Yoko Shimomura. If that name sounds familiar, it should. Shimomura has composed so many banger soundtracks, including work on the Kingdom Hearts series, Live Alive, Final Fantasy XV, and even Super Mario RPG. There's plenty of renditions of past tracks from the Mario series, like the castle theme from Mario 64 or the underground theme from Super Mario Bros. On the NES, all spruced up to fit more in line with the Mario and Luigi vibe. But there's a wide array of really good new songs here as well, like the main battle theme, the boss battle theme, Beam Beam Fields, and Teehee Valley. A lot of these tracks have been earworms for the past few days since I rolled credits. Great stuff, excited to hear more from future games in the series, absolutely. And so we're at the end. I really enjoyed my first time playing Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, and I must say, I'm very, very excited to play Partners in Time soon, and I'm really happy I played the original Game Boy Advance version first. I've fallen in love with the characters in this game, and a lot of that stems from the fantastic pixel art and how expressive everyone is. I'm going to play the 3DS remake eventually, but now that I have a frame of reference for the original version, I can't wait to see how they improved or maybe even made certain aspects of this game worse. But until then, I'm glad I finally got around to playing this classic Mario RPG, and I'm even happier that the series that's so important to so many people is getting revitalized when no one thought that would be possible. It's a fantastic time to be a fan of Mario RPGs, and I look forward to experiencing the rest of the series with you all. Thanks for watching.